welcome to the Republic of Football. I'm your host, Ishmael Johnson. I am the college editor here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, alongside staff writer Carter Yates. What's up, man?
It's good to be back in the studio.
Yeah, good back to be live, of course. And of course, the reason why we are live is because we have everyone's favorite Mal pal, Mallory Hartley. Behind the glass now. Still gets weird saying that, but she is in the other room now in our new studio. How you doing, Mallory?
Hey, it's good to be back. I feel like it's been a long time since we've been able to do a live show here in studio because you guys just like to box me out of the Republic of Football. So I don't know.
She's on to us.
Yeah, I'm getting on to you guys now.
Maybe
so
we shouldn't tell her that I've been teaching you the system to.
Oh, no. Don't like that.
I've been staying after in the office to work on the production.
I was about to say.
Actually, Carter's the one that made that intro that you guys
he's
just
actually
saw.
just secretly produced the whole show.
For some reason, I know, it's crazy.
So on today's episode, of course, it's just after spring camp, right? So if you listen to the past couple episodes, we kind of gave you our debriefs, me, Craven, and Carter, about our traversing's of the state and in preparation for the magazine, which we are still working on. We go to press officially next Friday. So we're in the final stages of all that. Everything is getting edited and read and edited over and all that stuff. So it's in the final stages. But that doesn't stop the college landscape from talking and from news kind of dropping. There hasn't been big breaking news, but there's been like big talk and like a lot of like things are coming or things are changing or things are happening. One of them, which we're going to talk first of all, is the future of G5 football. If you read Mike Craven's piece on TexasFootball.com last week, over just coaches that he talked to around the state, speaking very candidly on the future of G5 football. The fact that we're seeing the SEC and the Big Ten kind of become a power vacuum with the major programs in the country, that leaves kind of everybody else, including those in the Big 12 to a certain extent. At least right now, it's obviously with the G5, but maybe down the line it becomes something with the ACC or the Big 12. There becomes a separation of powers a little bit. His piece kind of goes into their thoughts on it, what the idea is, what the future could be. We're going to talk about that initially here in a bit. The second thing we're going to talk about is kind of a wrap up of a series that we're doing over the best case and worst case scenario on TexasFootball.com. Mike Craven's putting up pieces on every single team in the state, every FBS team, I should say. Their best case scenario for 2024 and their worst case. Like I said, we've all talked to all these coaches over the past couple of months, and now we kind of have an idea of where our expectations are, and that's kind of what those pieces are about. We're going to talk about teams that we think have the widest variance. There are some teams like Texas that, we expect them, the ceiling is a national title caliber team. The floor is still probably a team that competes in the SEC and does pretty well. So, we're talking about the teams that are the widest, that can have the lowest floor, but also the highest possible.
Be really, really good or really, really bad.
Right, exactly. And kind of what goes into that mindset and what makes those teams kind of have that variance. So, but first, I mentioned, if you have not checked out Mike Craven's piece on The Split, it's called A Split is Coming, Head Coaches Sound Off on the Future of G5 Football on TexasFootball.com. He talked to Rhett Lashley, Eric Morris, and Sonny Dykes candidly, and they were able to kind of relay their own thoughts on this. So let's get into it a little bit. There's some pretty interesting quotes here. And of course, TFT also talked about this, so we're not gonna spend too much time, but I did want to get our thoughts here. And then Mike Bloomgren as well, I think, was also in the piece. So first of all, what were your overall thoughts on, I'm gonna mention Eric Morris's quote, because I think that was the one that got people really thinking, where Eric Morris was candid in saying eventually he wants to see everybody have their own thing, right? The Power Five go over here, the Group of Five go over here. Do you agree with that? Or are you somebody who kind of sees it as pessimistic? Because I saw some pushback saying well, that's just a defeatist attitude.
No, I think that's exactly what's going to have to happen because Sonny Dykes got a lot of strays on social media for saying Alabama and Louisiana Tech aren't playing the same sport.
Right.
That's true.
It's true.
Especially now there's pretty much no scholarship limits in college football, and then they're trying to make it to where there's no coaching limits or anything. These Power 4 teams have just ballooned up now to where they are playing a different sport. They have different resources, all sorts of different money than the Group of 5 teams. I think Eric Morris is exactly right. And another thing that was interesting was Rhett Lashley's quote about, I think people would have liked to see the Group of 5 college football playoff. And no one wants to watch Oregon versus Liberty just 48-6.
Sure. I'll say this, to play devil's advocate a little bit. because I did understand a lot of the gripes with that, right? It's hard to, seeing the landscape change, it's hard to kind of come up with an idea that, well, we should just accept that we're, essentially admitting that you don't have the resources and you can't compete, right? And I think the critics were saying, well, if I'm a Liberty fan, sure, would I like to compete with SMU and those teams for a G5? Maybe. But also, like, if I'm a Cincinnati fan, I like the fact that, they got the doors blown off, but I like the fact that we were the first G5 to make a playoff. Mm-hmm. Is that, I'm asking you guys, I guess, as fans, is that to you, that 1 year of being a playoff team, again, regardless of the score, I think Rhett Lashley threw out the 48-7, right, against Georgia. Would you rather play for a championship or do that in a playoff? If you're one of those teams who has a chance, like Liberty last year, let's say they make the playoff, is that making the playoff, would you have want that in your hat, or would you have wanted, let me play against an SMU?
That's really tough. I don't know, because I don't know, does the 12-team playoff really give a Liberty a better chance to win the college football championship?
To win, no. To make it, yeah. They're in. Last year they would have been in, right?
And if they did go far, they would just be plucked by a Power 4 conference. Let's be very honest.
More than likely, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was I think that was more of the, people were looking at it as more of a defeatist attitude in terms of like, we kind of know where this is going, but I think there comes a sense of like fighting it until it happens. And this was more like what are we supposed to do?
Well, in that case, you're playing a rigged game.
Sure.
There's a difference between being defeatist and being realistic.
Yeah.
I did the SEC preview for the magazine, and a little bit of preview on that is Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, the Big Ten and SEC commissioners, they follow the Friedman doctrine as economists. Like their only responsibility is to do the best for their conference, and while the NCAA is battling court litigation because they stuck their head in the sand for half a century on athletes' compensation, the rich are only going to get richer because there is no overarching power.
Yeah.
No one is in charge anymore.
Right.
Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are in charge. So I don't think it's defeatist at all for Eric Morse to say they just have to separate at some point.
I think the one thing I did absolutely agree with Eric Morris on was mentioning, because of the fact that the G5 is so, outside of the MAC and the Sun Belt, the G5, and really nationally as well, obviously power brokers in the television network world, that's kind of dictating where everything is going. But especially since the G5 is kind of still beholden to what the power conferences do, they've lost all sense of regional association, right? So you have the MAC, which still does, and you have the Sun Belt, which for the most part still does. They've kind of creeped into the East Coast a little bit, but they have more or less a geographical footprint. Eric Morris mentioned, I know people in North Texas would be more juiced if we're playing Rice, UTSA, Texas State, UTEP, and SAM, as opposed to flying to Charlotte or East Carolina. And I agree with that, right? I think that's one thing that's become severely lost, and we're about to hit it tenfold this year with the ACC flying cross country, the Big Ten flying cross country, even to a certain extent the Big 12, right? They have teams on the coast and the Southwest.
The Big 12 is the most regional conference. It's not regional at all.
I was about to say it's the most regional, and it's not. You have Arizona jumping over an entire state to go play TCU, so it's things like that. And so I think that's something that would be, to me, that's what I would lean more into, as opposed to the. I think no matter what his point is, I think it's always going to come off as defeatist if you try to make it the let's have our own championship type of deal. I think it should be getting back, the idea and the spirit behind the argument should be we need to get more regional, right? Because we're not playing our peers. We're kind of losing that sense of community and that sense that built college football into what it is.
I think calling Eric Morris being defeatist for, we can't beat Alabama, so might as well make our own thing. Well, all your best players from North Texas left to go to the Power 4 program last year.
No, he's not being unreasonable. Let me make that clear, right? And so I think that's what a lot of people took that as, and I can see on the surface how you would see that, but if you actually just look into any detail, like it's not. It's realistic.
The regionality thing is, let me channel JFK. Why does Sam Houston play Florida International?
Right. No, 100%. Yes, exactly. And it's like, I don't know.
Okay, so speaking to Carter's point a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he said, North Texas pretty much had an entire roster turnover, right?
Sure.
Do you think if the G5 were to split off into its own kind of, they had their own playoff, they had their
Yeah.
own championship. Do you think that keeps players there?
Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, I think that's just the world that we're going to.
Yeah.
I do think that the last pendulum to fall as far as that's concerned will be the eventual classification of athletes as employees, right? Because what will happen is that's eventually going to happen, right? Whatever. And if it's just a Power 5 thing or if it's a full college football Division I thing, whatever. But that will happen eventually. And what that will then entail are contracts.
Right.
And again, do you get one transfer out of a contract? Do you get to transfer it all out of a contract? What does that look like now that these guys are making NIL money? So I don't want to go with a Texas. Let's go with a place like Texas Tech, right? Maybe that's technically in a power conference, but probably one of the power conferences that will get left out if the SEC and the Big Ten get their way. They have their Matador Club where they're paying $25K, I believe it is, to every single player. So that's an interesting test case because you have a payroll essentially, and if these guys get classified as employees, so they sign a contract, right? But then what happens if Texas comes calling, right? Does that negate, do you sign a contract basically saying, no, you can't?
Right.
Or what are the stipulations that you have to transfer? Because I don't think it's a good comparison to say like a North Texas because there's no Matador Club equivalent, right? Certain players are taken care of, certain players are not. And when you get, I think it's that next level of Big 12 schools that have more of a uniform, for lack of a better phrase, payroll that could then qualify for this. So I would be more interested. I think North Texas, the Texas States, throw my alma mater in there, they'll always, I think, lose players. But I'm more interested in the Texas Techs, where they have the SMUs, right, where they have the capability to keep certain players, and they're probably going to be one of the first to kind of implement these kind of contracts if the employee labor negotiation thing kind of plays out. Are those going to be the ones getting poached still, as opposed to just the G5? I don't know.
I think we have already seen a little bit of, we saw with Texas taking guys from Clemson, like we saw Texas going from Power 4 conferences like Arizona. So there's already a little bit of poaching going on between Big 12 and SEC.
Sure, 100%. I think, that's kind of the next pendulum to drop is we've seen I believe the Dartmouth men's basketball team was the first to
leave it to the Ivy Leagues to change the world.
I know, right?
To unionize.
They were the first to unionize and the first to kind of collectively, I don't know if they didn't collectively bargain, but they collectively unionized. And so that was the first. And again, that's only going to be kind of an eventuality, especially as Congress keeps shooting down all these NCAA, or at least they keep siding with a lot of these lawsuits against the NCAA.
Yeah.
And so,
I can't remember the last time the NCAA got a W.
Right. No, really. And so, but that's my point, is the only step to fight against that, because they're not going to get better in the eyes of Congress. They're going to say, no, this is all still very much illegal on your part. What eventually is going to happen next is like, okay, in order for you guys to enact these rules, these guys are employees now. And then you could actually start using labor law and all these kind of things to eventually, again, that's the next seismic shift that's going to kind of happen with the Group of Five, Power Five, all that stuff.
Well, I see a lot of similarities between the NCAA and our industry of the newspaper industry of we go 10, 20, 30 years ago and just refusing to change with the times. Like, no, we'll be fine and everyone will always, no one's ever going to look into this.
Right. And then all of a sudden, like, you get hit with a huge douse of cold water. You're like, oh no, something's happening here. Something's going wrong. And you're trying to change on the fly. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. So
it's adapt or die, baby.
Really is. All right, so before we get to our second topic, I do want to tell you a little bit about home field apparel. Mallory, I don't know if you've seen some of the baseball drops they've had.
Haven't.
They are dropping some, I believe right now they teased their TCU drop. They're literally just doing jerseys, baseball jerseys for baseball season coming up. Yes, and it is great. They have a frog ball TCU baseball jersey. It looks fantastic. They're going to be rolling out stuff like this all through the College World Series. Of course, if you're a racing fan, they've released their NASCAR and F1 series, which is actually really dope.
Seriously?
Yes, so 100%. If you look on homefieldapparel.com right now, McLaren, you can get all McLaren from F1. I don't know who exactly for NASCAR, but there are NASCAR. Hendrick Motorsports is one. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Arrow McLaren. Those are right now the Autosports gear, the Autosport gear that they have. I have friends who are very much into that a lot more than I am, and they admit the home field's already tier 1 in terms of Autosport merchandise. So great on them for getting involved in other sports and other industries. Really, they have. If you're running out of college stuff to buy like me, because I have a lot already, they also just do regular tees, right? They also do regular T-shirts and things like that.
Here's what I do when I have like when I've got the schools that I want.
Yeah.
I then start going for color scheme.
Yeah.
So like my next one I want is North Carolina because
Ooh,
I
yes.
love the baby blues.
Yes.
So I'm starting to go for color scheme now more than schools themselves.
Well, you're talking about how much you love black and yellow too, so Iowa has to be next.
Oh,
Ooh.
Iowa's been on the list.
That's
Iowa's
not
been
bad.
on the list. I need an Iowa football shirt.
That's
I
not a
need
bad
a
one.
punting is winning shirt. That's actually what I need.
That'd be fantastic.
Signed Iowa football.
Yes.
Signed by Brian Ferentz.
Even though he doesn't work there anymore. Still
Yeah,
signed by him.
But still signed by Brian Ferentz.
Yeah, so if you're watching the show on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, you can see in the top, oh, there it is right there. I'm pointing at it right here. Promo code DCTF for the 15% off your first time purchase. If you go on our Twitter account, DCTFCFB, you will see an affiliate link. So if you've already used your first time code, use that affiliate link if you want to support the show to shop through homefieldapparel.com. Again, they'll be rolling out their baseball collection. Football season's coming up again. They'll be probably announcing a bunch of new schools and new partners. I dare you to find a school that you don't like that's already available on there. I dare you to find something from your rival's school that you don't like, right? You're going to find something that's like, man, if I was a fan of this school, I'd probably buy it. There's so much stuff like that on homefieldapparel.com. Remember, DCTF, promo code DCTF for 15% off your first time purchase. All right, Mallory, let's get to our second topic.
Hold on, I have breaking news.
Do we?
General Booty has committed to the University of Louisiana Monroe.
Okay.
So
well,
UTSA out of the running.
UTSA is officially out of the running for General Booty.
So does that mean that Louisiana Monroe will be less booty now or more booty?
Snaps all around. Snaps all
Thank you.
around.
That's a pretty good one.
you.
In all actuality, that one actually makes sense because like that family is actually from like Eastern Louisiana, I think, or Western Louisiana, I think. So that actually makes a lot more sense than UTSA for them. That is some nice breaking news because UTSA was in the running after we had almost guaranteed they would not go after a quarterback. They were immediately in the running for.
I believe it was 2 hours after I said, I'm really happy UTSA didn't go after a transfer quarterback.
It was like, news is General Booty considering UTSA. It's like, oh, never mind. All right.
Oh, gosh.
So, not speaking of UTSA, because we're talking about teams with wide variance, let's talk about that. So, like I mentioned, Craven's been dropping a series. He just dropped Sam Houston today, by the way, of the best case and the worst case scenario for every single FBS team in the state. Now, we're going to talk about 4 teams? 3, 4? I'm trying to think.
Let's do 4. Let's do 3 and a bonus.
Let's do 3 and a bonus. Sounds good. But I want to talk about what makes a team with variance, right? What's kind of the environment that you need to have variance? In my opinion, there's almost always there's some type of, I don't want to say coaching instability in terms of like the head coach, but just staffing wise, instability or uncertainty. I think schedule plays into account as well. And then I think there is a very much an intrigue when it comes to the roster. I'll mention Texas again as an example of not having variance. We're all pretty safe in saying Texas's roster is good, right?
Yes.
We're all pretty safe in saying that Steve Sarkisian is good. Their staff is good. Their schedule is good. So therefore, they do not make up a team that has a lot of variance because a lot of things go in their way, right? Let's get to our first team about why this team that does have variance. Baylor. Head coach, unstable. Offensive coordinator. We'll see. I'm intrigued, but yeah, very much not. I like Jake Spavital, but it's very much his first year there. Roster, I'm intrigued, but I'm not 100% sold. But the schedule also does lend itself to some interest. It's not the hardest schedule in the world. It's not the easiest schedule in the world. So let's talk a little bit about Baylor to start off. That is our first team that I think has variance in terms of this team could win 3 games, this team could win 8.
I think the thing with Baylor is the roster is not entirely different. So what I'm banking on is Dave Aranda doing black magic in the film room on this defense.
Sure.
And that's why I think Baylor could go 9-3, or if the dual head coach approach doesn't work, go 3-9 and Dave Aranda's not there next year. What I worry about with Baylor is, okay, even if this works, like Jake Spavital does the offense, Dave Aranda does the defense. Okay, if Spavital has a really good year, he's probably just gone to be a head coach again. So are they just going to be doing like, hey, Baylor's the stop you make before you become a head coach again?
Right.
That's what the stability is?
Right. Yeah. That's a good point, because what is the stability, right? Has Jake Spavital's stock fallen enough to where he's probably there for 2 years before he gets a head coaching job?
Could be.
Maybe. But also, if I'm Arkansas, right? I can probably dare Baylor to outbid me for Jake Spavital, right? Sam Pittman's probably maybe getting fired. So it's like a new coach comes in, he wants Jake Spavital. Baylor, he did good stuff with Baylor. So he didn't have to leave for a head coaching job. He just get an upgrade. You know, Michigan could come. I'm just throwing out a team there. And then also, let's look at, I do want to talk about the roster too, because like that's been the biggest difference every time we've talked about Baylor from that title team to this team is like the roster's not as good. Or is it the roster hasn't been developed as well either?
No, because that title team, those are all Matt Rule's guys.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard.
Yeah.
You said it in the magazine last year. You're like, hey, Dave Aranda, when are we going to talk about, like, where are the guys you recruited that are here now? Mm-hmm. So I don't even know if it's really a development thing. I think it's just actually they haven't had the dogs.
Sure.
Does it also feel like they've spent way more time on the offensive side of the ball than the defensive side of the ball, which is kind of concerning because Dave Aranda is a defensive-minded guy?
And I think that goes into Carter's point. That's a good point you bring up. That goes into Carter's point because I think their solution is just Dave Aranda fix this. Yeah. Right? It's more or less, because again, they didn't move on from Matt Powledge. He's still the quote-unquote defensive coordinator. Yeah. He's still the quote-unquote, but in title, he's still the defensive coordinator. So I think theoretically, like 70% of his job probably doesn't change as far as like game planning. He's just going to be doing it with Dave Aranda now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to your point, Mallard, I think they think, or at least Dave Aranda probably thinks that I think we have the talent. We just I haven't had enough of my footprint on this or my handprint on this. Yeah. And I think that's more or less what I think what they're saying is the offense's issues were players and skill and and roster. I think they went with a different system. They got some different quarterbacks, some different skill position guys, and they're rolling out to see what changes. Defensively, I think they're just saying I wasn't involved enough, and they're betting on that. I don't know, to go back to the word of variance, I don't know how much that plays into it, right? He could very much work black magic, and all of a sudden Baylor is I don't think they'll be best in the Big 12, but like average to above average defense. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. But it could also be the same defense as last year, which wasn't very good. Yeah,
and then the offense has so much variance too because the wide zone's gone and hello bear raid.
Yeah,
with Jake Spavital. I mean, that wide zone, it was tough by the end of the year. Yeah. The offensive line was not good. We talk about Richard Reese, the freshman All-American, went from, hey, I'm a freshman All-American to I'm the third wheel in the second to last ranked rushing attack in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Like, what the heck happened there? Right. So that's why this whole Baylor program is win the Big 12 or 3-9. Richard Reese is freshman All-American or non-existent. Baylor is the definition of variance. Yeah. And what are we going to get?
And I think that's where Baylor is at a crossroads where they're trying to figure out, this is the year where you figure out what you're closer to. Are you closer to that Big 12 title team or are you closer to the team that went 3-9, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, again, I think in the middle of that, I think 6 wins keeps them around. Which is crazy to say, but I think 6 wins does keep them around, and that just divides the variance, which is like, okay, that's probably the middle of where I would, if I had to pencil right now, I'd probably pencil them in around there, right? If you're asking me in May, we'll see though. But yeah, they're kind of like the biggest variance right now in the state, everywhere from coaching on down. So yeah.
I mean, their schedule though is very tough. The first half of it, they get Utah is that counted as a non-conference?
No, that is not counted as a non-conference because that was set before the Big 12.
So that's a Big 12 game.
No. Sorry, that counts as yes, that does count as a non-conference. So that counts as a
non-conference game?
Because the contract was set because they played Utah last year. Remember?
Right.
That contract it was a home and home.
Home and home. That's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You get the Big 12 favorite. You dodge them on the conference schedule. But
that
you never play them second
genius.
Game of the year.
That's kind of genius.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
legit.
And then it goes Colorado, which will be the 4th game of the season, so they'll still be awesome. And then it'll be Iowa State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU. That's tough.
It's not easy.
Don't they play Air Force too in the
Air Force is Air Force. Tarleton, Utah, and Air Force are the non-conference.
Okay.
So.
Tarleton cakewalk.
Yeah. They'll be fine.
Air Force, I was talking about.
Yeah, Air Force is gonna be a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. Those service academies always like alternate who's good. So like it could be the year that they dip off and like Army comes back up or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
right.
But regardless, off last year, yes, absolutely, Air Force is gonna be tough. All right, any last words on Baylor?
No, let's move on.
All right,
Or did you have something, Mallory?
No, I was just gonna say they make me nervous.
they kind of make me nervous too. All right, let's get to a team that doesn't make me as nervous, but I think still has similar intrigue questions, I'll say. Let's get to TCU. TCU is a team that did not do much radically on the field. Off the field, obviously moved on from Joe Gillespie. They're giving Kendall Briles another year, which again, there could be debate on whether or not fans are happy about that. They did not go get a quarterback that would push for the starting position, more so as a backup in Ken Seals. And they're kind of running back a similar team as last year, while also losing their best defensive tackle in Dominic Richardson.
Yeah, but when I should have brought that up when we talked about, are we going to see the Big 12 teams start getting poached? Because TCU did.
Yeah, Dominic Richardson got probably just less than under $1 million.
Dominic Williams.
Dominic Williams, yes. So getting this back on why the variance is there. I think last year, if you take Texas out and you take Oklahoma out, and I'm going to even take the Colorado game out because that was the first game of the year. I think everybody underestimated the talent that Colorado did have and overestimated, I think, with the talent the talent that TCU did have. I think if that game's played in November, October, even probably September, different story. But take those 3 games out. If I were to tell you that TCU this year would be a 7 or 8 win team, I think you'd probably say, yeah, probably so, right? If I told you that TCU could be a 5 or 6 win team, you could probably say,
Yeah, I could see that.
yeah, I could see that too. Like Josh Hoover doesn't take a step forward. The running game is still weird because Kendall Briles doesn't want to commit to the run game. The offense still has red zone issues.
Which is insane too, because I was digging into the numbers with Kendall Briles in Arkansas, and
Yeah.
in 2021 they rushed for the most yards of any Power 5 team, and then 2022 they were 7th nationally in the rushing attack.
Well, I think it was because, one is because
KJ Jefferson.
I was about to say KJ Jefferson played a big part in that. And I think just having the quarterback involved in the run game plays a big part for him. So I'm wondering, I don't know. Let me boil it down. Oh, then also let me get back on Andy Avalos as well. That's the other one is the defense was bad last year, right? Flat out bad. And they weren't opportunistic like they were the year before. So again, the variance could be if TCU has an average defense, is that good enough to push them to 7 wins with the same offense as last year? But if the defense is bad again, and the offense maybe takes a step back or maybe doesn't get any better or whatever, right? You could see it stalling out again and having another disappointing year. I would lean towards the former. I think they will be more towards that 7 to 8 win mark, but they're betting on a lot. They're betting on a lot.
Especially with Josh Hoover not doing spring football.
Right.
Like, I did not want to see him not play at all in spring ball. I like Josh Hoover.
He's probably top 3 players in the state where I'm like, he probably needs to play spring ball.
Yeah, he's not a guy where I'm like, no, Josh Hoover's a proven commodity. He doesn't even, just shut him down for
Right,
spring. It's fine.
right. Yeah, he was injured, so they had to shut him down, and that's gonna, I don't want to say hurt, but that's something that gives me more worry, I guess I should say.
Yeah, and the fact that you brought in another Power 4 quarterback and he played the entire spring, and you're like, nope, Josh Hoover's still our guy.
Right.
Like 100%. He didn't make any push.
Yeah.
It's kind of concerning.
It's a little concerning. And so let's play the schedule game again, right? I think their schedule is okay. I think their non-conference is Stanford, Long Island, and then SMU, of course, the final. Was it the final or is it next year the final? I keep forgetting.
Next year's the final.
Next year's the final skill game. But still, Stanford, not a cakewalk, right? They weren't very good last year. They were fine last year. They had a really good showing against Colorado where it showed they have some skill position guys. Long Island should be a win. SMU, again, they beat SMU last year, and I don't want to say that they're not going to be favored in that game, but that game's always weird, right? That game's just weird. So we'll see what happens in that one.
And it's back at SMU, I think,
And
right?
it is back at SMU. So UCF conference games. UCF at Kansas State, Houston, at Utah, Tech, at Baylor, Oklahoma State, Arizona, at Cincinnati. That mid-October slate through most of November. At Utah, Tech, at Baylor, whatever they're going to be, versus Oklahoma State versus Arizona. That is a tough stretch.
Yeah, if they go into the last 3 games like 6-4,
Yeah.
or 5-5-ish. That's very tough to, like, you've got your 3 hardest games. Cincinnati, not really, but Oklahoma State and Arizona is brutal.
I was about to say, Cincinnati's you kind of end on a good note, but regardless, yes, that stretch before that is kind of brutal. And yeah, I don't know. They're betting on a lot. They're betting on Josh Hoover's taking a step forward, which I would. He was a freshman last year, showed some signs, so like I would bet on him, but there's no guarantees in the sport.
No, I don't think so. And the defense, Caleb Elarms-Orr, the Cal transfer, they're kind of hoping he steps in to be a starter right away.
Yep.
The linebackers kind of got exposed last year in that 3-3-5 stack system. I don't know exactly who steps in for Dominic Williams, really. That was a very painful loss.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really just do not know. I want to say TCU is an 8-win team for sure, but them winning 5 games.
They could also go 5-7 easily. I mean,
I think what we'll bet on, I think what we're all kind of betting on right now, despite the uncertainty, is the fact that we know this staff is a good staff. As far as like Sonny Dykes top down, right? We'll see if like Kendall Browse ends up being a good hire, things like that. But I think we like Andy Avalos as defensive coordinator. I think we, even going back to La Tech, Sonny Dykes is a proven head coach. So like we kind of assume that things will get fixed that need to get fixed, right? But I didn't think this team was a bad team last year. It was just kind of a team that didn't really have its way, right? I didn't watch TCU, again, until even including the Texas game to an extent. I didn't see a team that was like, this team's just bad, right? I was worried about that against Colorado, where I was like, oh, this team's not good because they're letting Colorado. But then it was like, okay, Colorado's kind of riding a high. It took a little bit for TCU to kind of really get going. Of course, the offense, it was more of a, like I think everybody acknowledged, more of a coaching scheme issue than maybe players. And so, but that still is to be determined. Like, Savion Williams needs to be the guy, right? He absolutely needs to be the guy this year. J.P. Richardson, like they need those guys to like, they didn't have that Quentin Johnson. I'm not saying you're going to find that anywhere, but we were kind of missing that top end that made them a lot better, or that would make us believe that they could be a lot better than maybe what they were last year.
The difference in 2022 was that team had a lot more swagger than the 2023 team.
100%. It goes back to the vibe change. It goes back to the vibe change where it's like all these guys were under lock and key for the longest time. Dad's gone. Here comes the cool uncle, Sonny Dykes. And everybody's like, oh man, this team's fun. We're doing all this stuff now.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun Saturday night, but Sunday morning, when that comes around, fun uncle's there.
Right.
A little bit hungover.
Yeah, exactly. So,
to that point too, I was also going to say, does 5-7 even look that bad if they didn't go to the national championship the year before?
It doesn't look great.
It doesn't look great, but it definitely doesn't look as bad as we're talking about.
It set them up, and I think Craven mentioned this too, and I think it's in his
It's a
preview
double-edged
little bit.
sword.
It is a double-edged sword because it set expectation.
Right.
It was like, oh, TCU. See, like a lot of fans knew that TCU had talent and that it wasn't being utilized under Gary Patterson. I think that season set him up to be like, look how much talent we've always had. It's national title caliber. And I think Sonny Dykes tried to like reload that a little bit, as opposed to if they went like 7 wins, 8 wins that first year, and then maybe a little dip 6-5. Everybody's like, oh, it's fine. You know, they're kind of in a similar vibe as a Tech. Probably, where it's like, oh, hey, this next year though, we're back. Let them. It's a slow burn, but this one's now. It's like, okay, you better win 8 wins.
Yeah, I think the media really just hyped up Sonny Dykes. Like, oh wait, is that him on the magazine behind you?
Who did that?
Always watching.
Who did that? Oh Jesus. But I mean, that's a good point, Mallory. Like, yeah, like that national title championship year, and then again, let's not forget they beat Michigan, so it's not like we just hyped them up to nothing, right? They beat they were the last team to beat the reigning national champs.
Back to Sonny Dykes getting skewered on Twitter by that quote they grabbed. Alabama and La Tech not playing the same sport. They beat Michigan.
They beat Michigan.
Like I know that championship game was really bad, but they got there fair and square. I'm tired of people acting like TCU just waltzed their way into the national championship.
Right.
Pokey.
The people just think that was the first round game or something, but. Anyway, yeah, I mean, again, that goes back to our overall point of that's why we have kind of cautious optimism about TCU this year. But there's still an environment to potentially haul off. We'll see. All right, let's move on to our last, at least the guaranteed one. We'll have a bonus one after this that we kind of talked about last minute in the office. Let's get to North Texas because you want to talk about a team that I'm very intrigued by.
Speaking of TCU quarterbacks.
Oh, that's a great transition. Speaking of TCU quarterbacks, Chandler Morris.
Who isn't even there yet.
Who is not even there yet, by the way.
But he's there in your heart.
Yep.
He's all around us. So yes, North Texas ravaged hard by the transfer portal. All their best skill position players, literally all of them, except for I think like Ikaika Ragsdale maybe is the Damon Ward as well. Damon Ward's still there. He's good. Everybody else left, and so we were like, all right, well, what's this team gonna be? Chandler Rogers was kind of everything, but then they got Chandler Morris. You're like, oh, okay, and him with Eric Morris, you know that they're gonna put up yards. I do think that we're underestimating, losing that backfield.
Yeah.
Because that was a lot of, and I believe they also lost.
The four horsemen of Denton in the backfield.
Yeah, but they also lost, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, LSU transfer running back, Trey Bradford, who was supposed to be there.
He was there for a cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee. But they do have the other Zach Evans, not that Zach Evans, but the other Zach Evans at running back.
Not TCU Zach Evans.
Right. So let me put it this way. Offensively, could they be better or as good? I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. There's going to be some, I think there's, again, depth at wide receiver, maybe an issue. But Chandler Morris married with Eric Morris, married with potential in the backfield, coached by Patrick Cobbs, who Mallory knows is a proven running backs coach and one of the best, probably the best of the past couple of years, other than whoever Texas has had at various times at producing running backs. Let's get to the side of the ball that I think dictates all of this.
Hold on, I got something to say about the offense. And
okay, go ahead.
I'm going to throw this out there, shoot it right back if I'm incorrect. Does it not feel like they might be worse at every position on offense this year?
I think quarterback's a toss-up because I don't know how Chandler Morris does in the AAC.
Yes.
But the wide receiver and running back room, I think, are worse.
I think they're worse. I also think that I'm considering the fact that they did not start their best quarterback till 3 games in last year. So I'm thinking statistically, if they have a slightly worse or as good offense for longer, I think that outweighs. Again, if Chandler Rogers starts probably both those games last year, they win. Maybe not the Cal game, but they're probably in the Cal game more. They definitely beat FIU, in my opinion. So I'm saying that. I don't think that let's put it this way. Eric Morris doesn't give me pause about the offense.
No.
I think they will be fine. Whether that's better than last year or worse, we'll see. I think that's where the defense comes into play.
Yeah,
if they're a little worse on offense, but literally any better on defense, they're probably a better team.
They probably win 6 games at that point.
Sure. But that gets to the defense. I like what they did in the secondary. They added a lot of talent in the secondary. I will say that, right?
B.J. Allen from Texas. Xavier Bryce.
From Texas. Look, listen, if they want to become the place where Texas players go, where they flame out, that is not a bad strategy. I was about to say, there is a worse strategy than just like, hey, 4-star who didn't turn out, come down here.
Isheem Young from Iowa State.
Yes,
Ole Miss.
Absolutely. The other part of the defense, front 7,
not a whole lot of changes.
Not a whole lot of changes. So it's very much I don't know, is it just me or does this reek of, I'm right, and the critics are wrong?
Kind of.
Yeah, because again, we'll see what scheme they come out with. Maybe that scheme that they shifted to haphazardly midway through the year is just what they're running. I don't think so. I feel like if you keep...
they want to go 3-3-5, don't they?
Yeah. Well, yes, yeah. I feel like if you keep Capone, you're keeping his system too. So.
Yes.
What I feel like it is the system is fine. We just needed bigger safeties and secondary play.
Maybe.
And what I'm saying is, yeah, you needed that, but you probably needed a few extra defensive linemen too.
You need bigger ones too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's my biggest concern.
Need Georgia level.
Because here's the thing. It's hard to be as bad as they were last year defensively, right? It's very hard. Mallory, you were at a lot of those games, and you were just watching the team get gashed through the run. You were watching them give up. The Seth Hennigan thing. I know it was a Hail Mary, but the fact that they were set up for him to get the ball it made no sense. That game should have been one that they won.
And with how bad the defense was, they were close in so many games.
Yeah.
Which is why they got so much variance. It's like you win 2 or 3 of those coin flip games. How much different is the conversation around North Texas right now? And how much different is the 3-3-5 would work, actually, if they just got a couple different players in there.
They just need the personnel too, yeah.
Yeah, I think looking back on last year, so of course they went 5-7. Cal, of course, was kind of a bad wake-up call. I think for everybody, they were like, oh, Stone Earl's probably not the guy, right? The defense is bad. I think Cal also had their backup quarterback in. So it was like, oh man, there's a lot of things wrong here. FIU, I stand by it. Chandler Rogers starts that game. That was 46-39. I think they win that game. Then it was La Tech, wins over La Tech, ACU, 3-point loss to Navy, 1 touchdown loss at Tulane, pretty impressive. They had that Hail Mary loss to Memphis. They had, I think that was 45-42, 37-29 loss to UTSA, 45-21 loss to SMU, of course, on Friday night. So again, there's 3 one-possession games in there, right? And it's the defense being a little better. It's not even saying they need to be shut down. And I'm wondering if this is them saying, you know what, we just got to make some plays. So we're going to beef up the secondary to get the ball back, to play aggressively, and kind of say, you know what, we may not be able to get the guys that we need to run this defense, but we're going to make your life hell, right? Exactly. We're going to at least frustrate. We're going to
be opportunistic.
I was about to say, we're going to try to probably lead the conference in turnovers or something, right? Try to be a little bit more proactive. Similar to what Texas State did last year, where it's like, yeah, we don't have the guys to maybe match you up, but we're going to hope you throw 2 picks, because that was the one thing they didn't do either. They didn't get the ball last year. They didn't get takeaways. So I'm wondering if bringing in guys who are help you on the back end when you get in these track meets that we know they're going to get in, it's like, okay, we need them to make 2 more mistakes than us, right? 1 or 2 more mistakes that flips that 50-50 our way. Because as we know, they're called 50-50s for a reason. Those one-possession games do go your way eventually, at least according to the numbers. Of course, there are some aberrations out there like Nebraska under Scott Frost, who lost every one-possession game ever, which was hilarious. But that's literally the exception to the rule. Eventually, you will see, theoretically, the thing could start to flip. And so maybe that's their thinking is, if these guys in the front 7 are familiar again with it for another year with the system, if they improve an inch and then the back end improves a lot, maybe that's enough.
I like that line of thinking. I think that's their plan B, though. I really think Eric Morris wants to stop the run at all costs, and that's what kind of worries me.
I don't think that's incorrect. I really don't. I think that's fair, because they got absolutely destroyed in the run last year, and that was their biggest issue.
It's like a hot knife through butter.
It kind of was. Alrighty. So lastly, let's play a schedule game real quick. South Alabama, Mallory, you were reading this yesterday. South Alabama, SFA, Texas Tech, Wyoming. Not easy. First of all, South Alabama, the only saving grace is that Major Applewhite, new head coach, so uncertainty there. SFA, they'll be favored.
Hold on, that South Alabama game, that Sunday show, Mallory, if that's a loss, that's going to be a tough show for you.
That's going to be I might not show up to that show. If that is a South Alabama.
What show?
Win.
I'm not showing up.
Oh my gosh.
So that could be a bad one. SFA, of course, they'll get their win there. Tech, at Tech.
Texas, they always start slow.
They do start slow, but it's at Tech, where they play perfect, almost.
That's true.
Wyoming, very tough as well. They got Wyoming in Denton.
They host Wyoming, too.
Yeah, that's crazy. Craig Bull may slap some people around there.
Yeah, Wyoming, welcome to the Thunderdome.
Yeah, but here's the saving grace. And this was my third point when I mentioned variance. AAC kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So host Tulsa, at FAU, at Memphis, host Tulane, new head coach, host Army, at UTSA, versus host ECU, at Temple. I would say there are 3 games that I'm saying they're absolutely most likely losing. In terms of 80%, I would bet on them losing. I'd bet on UTSA. I'd bet on Tulane, even though it's a new head coach. I would probably still bet on that.
In Memphis.
I'd probably go Army over Memphis, if I'm being honest. They were
I'm
really
going
close.
Army and Memphis.
I'd go both. Let's be for
They were
real.
really close against Memphis last year.
That 4-game stretch is so brutal.
It's very tough.
It's at Memphis, too, this year.
It is at Memphis.
And everyone keeps telling me East Carolina's going to be really good this year for some reason.
I feel like that's been the case. I like Mike Houston, but it feels like he's kind of been treading that water for a while.
Yeah.
But point being, it's not the worst schedule in the world. There is credence for, again, I wouldn't bet on this, but if Tulane isn't as good right away under their new head coach, if Memphis it feels like Silverfield's kind of been on that teeter where it's is he good enough for Memphis? Are they losing a little too much? Whatever. FAU, we'll see under Tom Herman. They were fine last year, but they weren't unbeatable.
Well, they had a 5-7 locker room, so Tom Herman locked them out, and they went 4-8.
I forgot about that. That's awesome. He's so cool. And then Temple. Of course, Temple's not good. And then East Carolina, UNT should be a favorite. So again, we get back to variance. That's where kind of my intrigue comes in. Like
Tulsa and FAU are must wins. Like you have to win those games.
Especially after that non-conference schedule. Like you can possibly start 1-3. Very likely.
If they start 1-3, I'm very nervous. Like if the only win is SFA out of all those three, that's very nerve-wracking. 2-2 I can live with.
No. I'm talking about South Al, SFA, Tech, and Wyoming.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, if they start 1-3.
I would bet on them 1-3. Wyoming's good.
Oh, I don't see him beating.
I think 2-2.
Wyoming.
I think 2-2 is good, in my opinion.
Like,
Wyoming beat Tech
I was hoping you'd have a little more Kool-Aid in you today on UNT.
I'm also just looking at the schedule now, and that mid-October to mid-November stretch is scary.
Yeah.
Because I mean you've got Memphis, Tulane, Army, UTSA back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
Quadruple barrel. Is there a bye week in there? Nope. Wait, yes.
Is there?
Okay, so there is a bye week.
You get a bye week before Army to prepare for the shotgun triple option.
Oh God. You're supposed to do it. Aren't you supposed to do it like after Army or something like that? Or do you need it's the extra. You need the extra week to prepare for Army.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So never mind. That works. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, again, we'll see. I would bet on them taking a little step forward, probably making a bowl. But if I'm sitting here in November and it's like, all right, so they're sitting at 4 wins, I wouldn't be shocked either.
I think bowl games a success.
I think so too.
I think so too.
All right, let's talk about our bonus team. The one that was not really on the list until I think was it Powers. Powers kind of brought
Me and Powers.
Yeah, Carter and Powers kind of brought
shoehorned them in.
Texas Tech. Now, let me preface this by saying, I don't think the variance is bad in terms of them bottoming out. But Powers kind of laid it out for me, and then we started looking at the schedule. The variance for their success, based purely on circumstance, is kind of potentially high. And again, I would lean towards realism and maybe more towards similar to year one as opposed to anything beyond that under Joey McGuire. But I mean, I think Tepper mentioned it, like 8 wins by the time they play Oklahoma State is not crazy.
Tepper said 10-0 is on the table.
It's on the table. I think it's like
it won't happen, but
it won't happen. I think it's like there's a path there, right? Let's again.
Well, the crux,
the
ahead. Achilles heel of the Joey McGuire era has been slow starts and road games.
Yes.
And they start off with Abilene Christian, the corpse of Washington State, UNT, Arizona State, who's the worst team in the Big 12.
Yep.
Who's
Cincinnati.
the second worst team in the Big 12?
So the second worst team in the Big 12. That if they are not, what is that, 5? They need to be 5-0.
They could be 5-0 going into Arizona.
Yeah. And then you look at the road games. Yeah, you mentioned Arizona, who has a new coach, right?
Yep.
In Brennan. And I think TCU, which we just talked about, is a variance team. I could see that game going either way. Baylor, it really does not matter how I feel about either team at the time. I would probably, from now and then in October, I'll probably take Tech in that game, just based off what I project for both of those teams. Iowa State, Oklahoma State are the only teams right now that I would say that Tech should be underdogs in. Right now.
They got a good draw. No Utah, no Kansas State.
No Utah, no Kansas State. And everybody remember, the embarrassing loss to Texas last year, just throw that away. That doesn't matter, right?
Nope.
It won't matter. The fact that they could be, and this is where Powers talked about, because he said the P word. He said playoff.
Yeah, he dropped
And I was like,
he did.
I was like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, oh, I don't think he's saying the talent is there to match up with a playoff team. But he's saying that the path is there to where, you could look up and you're like,
they could compete
oh
for a
my
Big
God,
12
Tech's
title.
ranked 9th,
Yeah.
in the country. And like all of a sudden you see them slotted into that Big 12 slot if they make the title game. It's there, and it's kind of crazy because we're coming off of what was last year, obviously, which was a disappointing year, but everything's kind of lining up. I think it depends on quarterback staying healthy.
Yeah, Baron Morton's got to stay
Baron
healthy.
Morton's got, I think, honestly, is it like 70% the quarterback staying healthy?
Yeah, that's what it's been every single year.
Yeah, kind of.
Every single year.
Because they have the guy in Taj Brooks. They have a solid wide receiving core who they just revamped, basically, including Micah Hudson. And they have a defense that's been decent. It hasn't been groundbreaking, but I think Tim DeRuyter is a good defensive coordinator.
So I have a piece coming out tomorrow of the most intriguing player on each Texas FBS team, and Spoiler alert, Texas Tech will be Baron Morton. And basically my reasoning for that is he is no longer, hey, the highest signee quarterback in program history. Now it is, dude, you have to stay healthy.
Yeah.
He is this is his 4th season. The first 2 years that he has played, he has had an injury that severely either ended his season in 2022 or severely hampered him in 2023. It feels like we've just been waiting for the Baron Morton, like, here I am.
Yes.
And he's talked about as the sure thing. I don't know if he has proven to be a sure thing yet.
Right. No, I think that's very fair. I think the other thing that I want to make sure about this before I say it.
Just say it. Who cares? Just say it.
Just say whatever. Don't So what's been the difference? What's been the saving grace for Texas Tech since Joey McGuire's got there? It's been kind of the backup quarterback situation. Is Jake Strong or Will Hammond their backup quarterback right now? Because the fact that they had a Baron Morton as a backup for Tyler Shuck, and then when his first year they had a Donovan Smith as the third quarterback, or I guess the second, then Baron Morton. If Baron Morton goes down, true freshman Will Hammond or Jake Strong, who we kind of acknowledge was not probably it, they did not address the backup quarterback situation as far as proven players.
They did because they shut Baron Morton down for the spring to basically prep their backup quarterback.
Sure, I guess, but like,
I was going to say, do they have more confidence then?
I mean, I think yes. I was about to say, I think yes. I think that's the answer. My question is, you almost are certain, based off of just precedent, you're almost certainly going to have to play them sometime this year.
Yeah.
Is that enough? Now, again, I could have asked that same question about Baron Morton his freshman year. Was he ready? I think he was, obviously. But that's not a guarantee. I like Will Hammond a lot. I don't know if he's ready to, if he has to play.
If it happened in the
at
first,
Utah,
if it happened in the first 3 games, I think it'd be Jake Strong. After that, it's going to be Will Hammond.
Sure, 100%. But I'm saying, like, I don't think I wouldn't be, as a fan, not as a coach. As a coach, obviously you bet on those guys. Yeah. But as a fan, I wouldn't be as confident heading into this year with a Jake Strong as my backup as I was knowing Baron Morton was there behind Tyler Shuck.
No, I totally agree.
So, yeah, we'll see. But again, this is now becoming, we talked about Matt Rule's guys at Baylor. This is Joey McGuire's team now. Like, this is fully turning over to be his roster. And now in the new Big 12, there comes that level of expectation. Again, I think something closer to year 1 is realistic in terms of like 7, 8, potentially 9 wins. The fact that we're talking about variance, a possibility, 9, 10, possibly more, like, that's crazy, but it's not unfounded, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Everyone was a year too early, including all of us, on the Big 12 championship dark horse train.
Sure, 100%. Yeah.
This is the year.
This is the year. Honestly, you can probably, I mean, again, they won't be favorites because of the Oklahoma State, Kansas State, probably Utah. But like, if you came out and said they're 4th or 5th in the Big 12, yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
Taj Brooks back, revamped wide receiver room with Micah Hudson.
Healthy Baron Morton, knock on all the wood possible, and then the defense still being good. Like, every year we seem to ask, like, who they got to replace X, Y, and Z, but they seem to. So, all right, we'll see. So yeah, that was the bonus team, a team that's doesn't have a low floor, pretty high floor, but very much a high ceiling possibility as well. Alrighty, so that'll do it for us. That was a nice little off-season topic. We're in the middle of magazine season, so we're kind of evaluating a lot of teams, and so we're kind of thinking about that.
Yeah, my headphones just turned off. We almost made it. Uh-oh. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I cannot hear Ish.
Oh, do I have to close it out now?
You might have to close it out. Yeah, mine's on. This is dead.
Oh, here's my star-making moment.
All right, Carter. Carter's, there's not a one-shot on you, so you're just going to have to...
Should I move over to Ish's one-shot?
Please do.
All right. Just want to say thank you so much for tuning in live to the ROF podcast. We'll be keeping it locked in for the magazine coming out soon. Most importantly, go Rutgers, and we'll see y'all next week.